welcome. It is Farmcraft 2024. We are moving right along through this season and so glad to have you join us. My name is Claire LeBeau. I'm the Chief Advancement Officer for NASEF. We are the network of academic and scholastic esports federations, and we are so fortunate to partner with these organizations here, the State Department and American Corners and American Spaces, and Clever Like Studios, without whom none of this would happen. So let's get right into it. Niles, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Niles Cole. I work in the Office of Agricultural Policy at the U.S. Department of State.
Perfect. All right. And Clever Like?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Brian, Clever Like Studios. We create educational experiences inside of popular video games like Minecraft, Fortnite, and all those things. So
perfect.
Off to Eric.
All right. I am Eric. Go by River online, and I am the education content producer for Clever Like Studios. So if at any point during the season you're like, wow, these challenges are hard, you know who to blame, which is me. But at the same time, like today, I'm excited, I say this, I'm going to say this all season long. I cannot believe we're on season 4, like ridiculous. But also we're at that point in season 4 where we start to see what the students are doing, and we get to start seeing that today. It's my favorite part of all of it is to say like, oh, that challenge I wrote, now I get to see how the students kind of explored that, took it, what ideas they came up with, and so on. So we're going to be sharing some of that out, not all of it. I do want to point out, by the way, while we're on this stream, we know that earlier this week, there were some technical issues with Flip. So if you didn't get to submit those challenges because you went to Flip and Flip was down that day, we know. I think an email went out. So keep them coming. It's okay. We're still going to explore them. And to be honest, even if we see some really great ones from the first one, maybe we'll share them on later streams because those are still going to be relevant content throughout the season. So don't let that discourage you from submitting. And remember, of course, you do need to submit to all of those things if you want to be eligible for prizes and stuff. So keep those submissions coming.
Yeah.
You mean this isn't just for fun? There
wow.
prizes?
No, don't forget about the prize. I just want to learn.
Prizes.
Prizes.
We have no
Okay.
control over whether or not Flipgrid goes down. It happens sometimes to every website. So it's back up as of, last time we checked, because we did get to see some of your videos. So keep them coming if that was an obstacle you saw and you need to get those videos in.
Perfect. All right. Since you brought up one of my favorite words, which is prizes, I feel like I should also mention my other favorite word in relation to Farmcraft, which is free. Just a reminder, it is completely free to enter. And if you want to join and you do not have Minecraft Education Edition, we will provide it to you, yes, for the fantastic price of $0.00. So make sure that you're registering and joining these challenges. So
what is $0.00 in the other currencies?
Yeah. What about the conversion rate?
What about in yen?
The conversion rate of 0 to 0, it's fantastic. It's 0 everywhere.
The easy one to do in our heads. Yeah.
That's probably the only one I could do in my head for sure. All right. Well, I am so excited. As Eric mentioned, we do have some fantastic submissions to preseason challenge number 1. So we want to go ahead and hop in and share these with you. The first one we're going to take a look at is from a team known as the Cyberpunks, and they are from Heritage Montessori in McDonough, Georgia. So I'm going to go ahead and let's get this one rolling. Got the school logo.
Whoa. Dramatic.
One of the autonomous creation that we built on this farm is the sugarcane farm. We got
sugarcane.
How we create this is we got the red stone, the smooth stone with the sand.
Autonomous is a mechanism or machine that basically doesn't need like any manual labor, so it basically works by itself. And so what I made was an autonomous wheat farm. So what it uses is a redstone. It basically uses redstone to power itself. And what happens is that when the wheat is grown, I use dispensers right here, and what the dispensers have is water inside. So I can try to, it has water inside it, and that it basically will be dispensed. And so once that's done, the leftover wheat will go travel through these hoppers, and that will appear through this chest. And of course, I would have to do it like this.
And here comes the wheat.
For my autonomous build, I created the bamboo farm. So how this works is this track will repeatedly go around, and once the bamboo grows 3 blocks tall, the observers will cut it down and fall through the ground, and this hopper cart will catch it and bring it to the back here and drop into these 2 hoppers, and these hoppers will transport it into the chest.
Okay, so for my autonomous farming equipment, I use coding to farm an agent to both farm and harvest crops. So when I press in FM for farm, it will teleport to me and begin farming down crops.
I like that.
So, yeah, just as a reminder, this first challenge was all about applying autonomous farming practices or technologies to traditional farming. And we talked about the different ways in the challenge that students could do that. They could do it through sort of prototyping or modeling. They could do it using code. They could use it doing redstone. And, I watched this video a few times and I caught something this time that I never caught before. So one, obviously, they used some redstone coding. Actually, or redstone build. They did a lot of that. They did some coding. We saw them do coding. And if you notice, there was one scene there where there was like a big, really cool red build of a tractor, like in the background. So, there's this idea that like I think they did all three. They didn't show us everything, but they took all three of those to heart, right? Like we're going to build some things that are just there that we can talk about maybe later on. We're going to build some things that are functional using redstone, and we're going to build some things that are done all through code. And so that's kind of the portion of the challenge that they took to heart. And I loved seeing like that they kind of experimented in different ways, right? And didn't just say, we're going to lean into this one idea.
Very cool.
You could see the learning there.
So the next one that we're going to see is from Team Mindcraft, and they are from Hannibal, Missouri. So let's take a look.
Didn't we have a team from Hannibal join us at our last stream?
We did. Hannibal is rocking it.
These are our automatic farms. Over here we have our pumpkin and melon farm. It automatically harvests melons and pumpkins once they've grown, and the pistons push them into the stream of water. This is our automatic sugarcane farm. It automatically harvests the sugarcane when it grows all the way, and all of the harvest items are pushed by water or go through mud down into our little minecart tunnel, which fills up the minecart with our produce. See, it's already waiting for transport.
Nice. Got to schedule
The main
that delivery.
is plant. So this will make him plant as much as I want. I can control that by the repeat, and it'll plant in 2 lines or 4 lines. It'll be like 1 and then turn left, and then the harvest is the exact same. And he'll break it and then collect everything he has and drop it in a hopper at the end. So he's right here. This is what we'll be farming. Plant. So the plant code, I also put a tilling, so that way if you're on land that isn't tilled already, he'll till it for you and immediately plant the potatoes or whatever other crop you want on there. And I'll just show you the first bit of this, the first few lines, and then we'll cut to the end. So as you see at the end, right here, he turns around and he goes back the other way. He goes all the way through.
Oh, sleight of hand too. Switching the switching the tools.
Ambidextrous, is that it?
That's the word.
Harvesting. And he's gonna go through all of them, and then go and drop it off in that chest, where Ivy will show her transportation system to get it all the way to the shop.
Yeah, so
It's not too much different
really
than
great about this one.
And now back again. See, he cleared this whole field, and he's right here ready to drop off. You just type drop, boom. And all gets collected.
Oh.
Kind of like the modern combine harvester. Right?
Today I'm going to show you how our
Pretty cool,
produce
right?
gets to our supermarket. So all I have to do is hit /cart, and this tells my agent to hit the dispensary button, and there goes the cart. This cart is going to go around our farms and collect everything that it can. It's going to go over this bridge to our supermarket. So if you go up in the back over here, you can see that the cart is emptying itself into this, and so we're having items put in. The cart must be empty. The cart is empty, and will probably be on its way back. Then we're going to go around to the front to see our supermarket with all the items that we are selling to our local produce.
You're going to love the
So
shopkeeper.
you walk in and you have all the items that you can buy. Currently a little out of stock. Needs to be stocked up. And we have a robot that will tell you everything that you need to do. He is programmed to say, hey there, welcome to the market. Tell you the prices of every item that we sell.
So I love
that's
that they took it so much further, right? Like we told them just, autonomous farming practices, but they were like, but wait, if we participated last season, and this is for those teams kind of thinking back to what we've done over the years, they were like, well, transportation was part of the farming practice. Getting it from, the farm to the tables or to the stores was part of the farming practice. So they coded all of that.
That's impressive. I was thinking that,
Yeah.
that's a flashback to last season.
Right.
Great to see that all brought together. All right, and we have one more that we want to share with you today, and this is from a team from Japan, and this is the Onigiri Ninja Company.
We are Onigiri Ninja Company. We deal about autonomous farming. In Japan, the problem of saturation of agriculture is becoming more serious as people involved in agriculture continue to age. Agriculture has been increasingly automated over the past few years, with robots handling harvesting. For example, the result of the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries Smart Agriculture Demonstration Project are introduced of the demonstration of an automatic asparagus harvesting robot at the production site. The adoption of robot reduces working hours and maintains the quality of crops in order to aim for sustainable agriculture. It is essential to solve the problems of farmers in this way. Japan is surrounded by ocean on all sides and is occasionally hit by major disasters. We have seen many cases on the news of typhoons and crops that were about to be harvested or smooth being water and cannot be put on the market. So I came up with the idea.
Wow, that's really smart to think
they-
about. Go ahead,
Yeah, go
Eric.
ahead, Claire. I'm sorry. Okay.
I was going to say the fact that they're affected by all these natural disasters, and then how do you plan in advance to deal with that?
And
love
again,
the
that's
robot.
something, they went back to previous seasons where we talked about climate impact and how that could affect harvest.
Yeah, I particularly love the example of the robot that they had for their harvesting mechanism, because it looks like something that we might use in the real world. I know this is in the Minecraft game, that's what we have available, those redstone components, but that mechanism would resemble how things would be harvested in the real world. Like, how do you pick a tomato with a robot? The robot has to identify the fruit. It has to be able to grab it without crushing it. It has to be able to remove it from the vine and then place it in a container so it doesn't get squashed. Perfect. How about that?
Right, like push a slime and then pull yourself towards the slime and then push the slime and pull.
And then Brian was gone.
No, that was super creative use of Minecraft
did
implementation. Yeah, that's right.
Mime rope.
Yeah.
Take the elevator down.
What I thought was really great about the video, and they start right off with it, is talking about the real world cases of it. So, there's, with anything that we've done for 4 seasons now, we've talked about, I wouldn't say the pros and cons, but more the necessity and the hurdles and the challenges that come with those things and why. That doing things a certain way isn't always the best way for every possible scenario or every possible community, which is why we have a variety of farming practices and not just one, now traditional farming practice that is used across the globe the way it always has been, right? We're constantly advancing these things.
Wait, does that...
Because
that was such a segue.
Does that mean we get to our second preseason challenge?
I think it does. It
my gosh.
does.
Tell us what it is.
So in our second preseason challenge, and I'll do a brief one now and then we'll dig into it, we're going to look at non-traditional farming practices. So what are those farming practices that don't take place on what we consider a big open field traditional outdoor farm? Some of them are still non-traditional, are still outdoor. Some are non-traditional indoor. Some of them don't involve just crops. Some of them are kind of high-techy, if you will, and some of them are just clever ways of problem solving. So we're going to take a look at some of those non-traditional farming practices, and we're in luck because we have someone who knows a lot about that. Hi, Niles.
Hi. I don't know if I know a lot about it, but I do know some about it. And I'd like to actually reference the second video that we saw from Hannibal, right? They had a greenhouse in which things were growing in we would say a hydroponic solution. So you have open field agriculture, you have hydroponic agriculture, and then you have aquaponic agriculture. So what's the difference between those? These are things that are used day to day to help increase food production and food efficiency. And so open field agriculture, that's it. You're in a field, you plant your crop, you have to wait till that crop is harvested before you can actually use it. It requires that you have a fertile soil. So that means you have to either make sure that you're treating your soil correctly. It relies on rainfall if you're not going to be using agriculture. The yield potential really depends on your climate, your soil, and your growing conditions, the health of your plants. If there's viruses in the soil, then you're not going to get a good yield. Cassava is particularly susceptible to that. Other plants are too. Bananas and banana wilt, right? Like that can devastate your crop, and you have no control over what's in the soil. It's easy. There's a reason why agriculture all over the world is done in a field, right? It just requires access to land. It requires access to some moderate tools, but it can be done by hand, right? You don't need a big plot of land to grow enough food to feed a family. And the sustainability of open field agriculture really depends too on how you do it. Like you can have large scale industrial agriculture to small scale, really artisanal or family sized plots. The subsistence agriculture is still practiced widely around the world, where a family grows the food that they need for that year based off of the rainy seasons or whatever it is, their climate where they live. Then on the more high-tech side, you have hydroponics, which requires basically suspending plants in a nutrient solution, no soil involved. There's no soil involved. This can be done anywhere. So it can be done in cold climates and hot climates. The only complexity is that you have to invest in the infrastructure to do this, right? So the water usage, it's much better in terms of water usage compared to open field agriculture. You can save up to 90% of the water usage compared to open field agriculture, even if you're instituting drip irrigation technology, because your water losses are minimized because you're in a closed system. It can be done in a container, a shipping container. It can be done in a warehouse. It can be done in any sort of environment that you can control the climate, so you can create suitable growing conditions for agricultural products where you are and also close to market. The complexity of this is moderate. It requires know-how. You have to be able to calculate parts per million. You have to make sure your nutrient solution is correct and the pH is correct and that the plants that you're growing are suitable for this kind of agriculture, because not all plants are suitable for this, right? You can't really grow nitrogen-fixing crops, beans, peas, anything that forms some sort of symbiotic relationship with the soil and fixes nitrogen doesn't really work in a hydroponic style agricultural system, right? Large fruiting plants. So I referenced the second video because I say, here's where our pumpkins and melons are growing. Well, unfortunately, hydroponics don't really work for melons and pumpkins or things that require an extensive root system and pollinators that will really be able to do the job. Some root vegetables, carrots, potatoes, onions, things that require deep soil for root development really don't work. And these plants are the staples for a lot of food systems, right? So carrots, potatoes, onions are used in many cuisines across the world. So you can't really supply everything you need through a hydroponic system. And if you can't plant beans, you can't really get protein, right? You can get a lot of good vegetables, but you can't really get a good source of protein. And the other thing is this can be resource intensive. It requires access to some infrastructure, whether that's water, whether that's electricity, whatever it might be, so that you can create a system that works. Then you have aquaponics. And if I'm talking too much, just stop me and ask questions.
I have a question. I do have a question for you. So it's like, you got to know, like, hey, you got to have the right amount of nutrients. You got to have the right amount of this. Like, you just eyeball the water and be like, hey, it doesn't look right, or just have a little taste, or what? Like, how do you know if your water is right and having the right nutrients and stuff like that?
And that's what the complexity of the system, right? So you have to be able to test. You can do it by measurement, right? You say, okay, I need to add this much of this kind of salt and this much of this kind of fertilizer to this much water, and I need to make sure it's adequately dissolved and it's at the right temperature, and then I test for the pH. And that's more complex than just putting seeds in the dirt and waiting for it to rain, right?
So we need some kind of sensor is what you're saying.
You need some kind of sensor. You need some sort of mechanism, whether that's someone visually checking with a litmus strip to check the pH, or someone having a digital sensor. And this is where the confluence of digital agriculture comes in, right? A lot of this stuff can be automated. You can check the light levels through sensors. You can check the pH levels. You can check the nutrient levels, and you monitor this constantly. And the more data you generate, the more productive your system can be. And
Niles, I feel like
there was a slight hint of a segue there.
There was. I know. Like, I'm just listening to you talk and thinking this is not what most people think agriculture is. And I hope that we are really opening the minds of these students to realize if you are technically minded, that does not rule out a career in something related to agriculture, because everything you're describing there, it's so intricate and there are so many different disciplines woven together. I love it. So I know you're going to tell us a little bit. I think you started to say aquaponics. So as you do that, let's dive into aquaponics, and we're going to hop into our Minecraft world at the same time. So Niles, tell us about aquaponics. What's different?
So Eric's going to demonstrate this as I talk about it. So the difference between aquaponics and hydroponics is aquaponics incorporate another living organism. What do those incorporate? Fish, right? So what you're trying to recreate in an aquaponic system is a viable ecosystem where the fish feed and then excrete their waste into the water, which the plants then absorb and filter the water for the fish. So you, as the farmer, add input to your system by adding food for the fish. And here we have trout. And trout are actually one of the common fish that are used in aquaponic systems. The other ones being tilapia, barramundi. There are some other popular fish as well. Tilapia is a really popular one. And the plants are suspended in the water, very similar to a hydroponic system. But the fish waste is converted into nutrients for the plants by the bacteria interaction. The bacteria decompose, eat the waste, release nutrients into the water. Plants absorb those nutrients. They filter out the waste and the particulate matter so the fish can live in a clean environment. The water usage of this system is incredibly low. It's even more efficient than a hydroponic system because it's a closed loop. Right? And so this can be high tech as you want to make it, just like a hydroponic system, but it can also be very low tech. And I have seen this implemented in very low tech environments. When I was serving in Uganda, aquaponics was an incredibly important source of both food, nutrition, and income for families there, because with a small aquaponic system, you could raise protein in the form of tilapia. You could raise cash crops in the forms of herbs, leafy greens, strawberries, tomatoes, and cucumbers and peppers, which sold well, which would allow people to send their kids to school. Right? And so it was a really hugely important innovation, and it was done in a low-tech manner. To scale it up requires a lot more technology because you need to be able to monitor the water levels. You need to be able to make sure the fish aren't transmitting diseases back and forth between the plants or the fish. It requires more technology if you want to scale it up, but it is scalable, right? So it can be highly sustainable because the system is closed. The plants are not exposed to the viruses or bacteria that might be harmful or pathogens that might be harmful from the soil. The fish are also likewise protected because they are in a closed system, so they're not being introduced to disease. The yield potential is very high, not as high as hydroponics, but the complexity of the system is very high, right? So it requires a lot of technical knowledge or at least experience to manage the system well, right? It's easy to start a system. It's hard to maintain the health of that system without constant monitoring. So in terms of yields, like we're looking at open field agriculture and we're talking about tomatoes, right? And an open field, if you have 1 acre of land, you might be able to grow 20,000 pounds or about 9,000 kilograms of tomatoes in a growing season. With hydroponics, for that same amount of time, you could grow 35,000 or about 16,000 kilograms of tomatoes. Wow. So almost twice as much as open field agriculture, right? For the same amount of land. And with aquaponics, you could grow about 28,000 pounds. And forgive me, I didn't do the conversion into kilograms. So it would be about 14,000 kilograms, maybe 12,005, I think, kilograms in terms of aquaponics. But what you get from aquaponics that you don't get from a hydroponic system is a viable source of protein that is you could sell in the market, whether that's trout fillets or tilapia fillets or whatever it may be. So I've talked a lot, and I'm sure you might have some questions, but.
Wow.
Well, Niles, you started off by saying you know a little bit, and you know
Seriously.
a whole lot. This is
I was
so
gonna
much
say.
valuable information. So what is the decision point for somebody who has a little bit of land and they're trying to decide, what do I do? How do I proceed? Aquaponics, hydroponics? I don't have enough land for a traditional farm. What are some of the decision points for that?
I think the first decision point is, what are you going to grow, right? What's your climate? What's your water source? What would be viable in your climate? If you're going to be doing this kind of system, do you have the ability to create a climate controlled environment? Like aquaponics and hydroponics are great for leafy greens, right? They're great for herbs. They're great for tomatoes. They're great for peppers, basil, mint, that kind of stuff, right? That doesn't grow everywhere well. So if you're going to grow that kind of stuff in a climate that's not suited to it, then you need to have some sort of cover or climate control. Like some plants are susceptible to sun damage, some require shade to grow. That's your first step. Can you get access to good seed in your market, right? What vegetables grow well in your market or sell well in your market? Leafy greens, from lettuces to collards to spinach, is, some sell well, some don't. So what also transports well? What capital do you have access to? Right? That's a big question. So in the Ugandan context, farmers did not have access to a lot of capital. So even to save up several $100s was a big investment for the family.
I was going to say capital, just because I know we have students watching this stream from age 8 all the way up to 18 and beyond. Capital is
money.
The money. You need money
right.
to get started, right? And not everybody has a lot of money.
Right.
No,
right.
not for Farmcraft. Seriously.
Brings it back. If you have an actual farm, there is capital or money required to invest in the materials, the seeds, all of that.
The pumps, the electricity. So do you have access to reliable electricity? If not, then these systems may be difficult because you need to keep the water circulating, particularly for an aquaponic system or a hydroponic system. The water needs to move. You need to be able to, for a hydroponic system, to make sure you have access to filters. These things can be done cheaply, but they require money. And so if you are a subsistence farmer who generally do not earn a lot of money for their crops, right? The way the farming ecosystem works is the person who grows the food generally doesn't reap the biggest benefit from that process. It's a big request. It's a lot for them to save up the money necessary to invest in even a simple system, even if that simple system will create a lot of opportunity economically for that farmer.
All right, so you gave us a couple words on screen there, Eric.
I did. We like to introduce vocabulary words that you don't necessarily have to know,
right?
But that we have fun with every season. We have like something that becomes our buzzword. And as we were preparing for this one, Niles gave us some examples. So Niles, you want to take these ones away?
Well, anadromous. So these are fish that start their life cycle in a freshwater source, such as salmon. And when they migrate to the ocean to live out their life cycle before returning to their point of origin to spawn again. So salmon is the classical example, but there are other kinds of fish that are anadromous. Off the top of my head, herring. I'm trying to think of some others. Blanking on it right now, sorry. But there are a few fish that fall in this category. Steelhead trout, that's another one that I was trying to think of. Then you have catadromous, which is the opposite of anadromous. And there's not a lot of fish that fall into this category. Particularly, we're talking about eels. So they spawn in saltwater, but then migrate back to freshwater to live their lives. So freshwater eels are catadromous. And this is not something that anyone is expected to know. But, the life cycles of eels is fascinating. Yeah, fun fact.
I cannot wait to see. I know that some of our students are going to figure out a way to drop these words into their submissions for preseason challenge number 2. We're going to keep our ears and our eyes open.
Like if we could figure out an aquaponic system
yeah,
for anadromous fish, that would be great, right? Salmon is one of the most popular forms of fish in the world, but they require a saltwater environment to grow. And you can't grow crops in a saltwater environment. So if someone figures out how to combine anadromous protein production with crop production, legume production, that would be a revolution in
do we have 2 tanks, one freshwater, one saltwater, where there's like a brackish tube between them? We can add brackish, by the way, to our vocabulary list of water, right?
Right, brackish in between the 2. That is my non-technical description of brackish water.
It's a good description. It really, really is. So,
all right.
With that in mind, I think we need to kind of dig into what the challenge is this go around.
Absolutely.
And of course, how to get involved.
So here we go. Our favorite page.
Always. Right. As always, if we head to nasef.org/farmcraft, we will be on the Farmcraft page. By the way, if this is the first stream you're watching, it is not too late to get involved. It is never too late to submit the previous challenges if you're looking to do complete all of the tasks that are involved to be eligible for the prizes. Claire's favorite part again. But it's never too late to get involved at this point. The window for registering is still open. You can see the register now button is still there, and it's going to stay there for quite a bit during this season.
Look what
so
else
it's never
is
too
there,
late to get
Eric.
involved. I know, this is so exciting.
Woo! Team guide in Spanish. We have had so many requests. One of the things we love about Farmcraft is that participating from everywhere in the world accomplishes one of the objectives of the American Spaces, which is English language learning. At the same time, it can be helpful to have these guides available in the native language. And so we have translated now. The team guide is now in English and Spanish.
God, love it. And if you did already participate, if you're one of our teams who already participated and submitted to Challenge 1, and look, by the way, Challenge 1 is still on the page. So if you're just getting started, don't worry about this deadline here. This deadline is really to keep you on track. This deadline is there so that we can share your videos and so on. But it is not a requirement that you meet these exact deadlines in order to be eligible for like the final competition. Right. We want to see all that work from you, even if you're getting a late start, and again, there will always be reasons why we may come back and share some of this as we have these discussion points during the regular season. So you never know. But regular season 2 challenge is up. And while we are getting that ready to go, we said Flip did have some issues, and that's okay. You will see that there is the submit that takes you to the Flip, but there is also the educator guide. The educator guide, even for students who are doing this, I highly recommend opening it up, because this is where you're going to get the really detailed breakdown of what the challenge is and how to go through the process of addressing it. So I'm going to open up that educator guide, and let's take a look. We'll zoom in a little bit here. Let's take a look at preseason challenge number 2. And preseason challenge number 2 is all about non-traditional farming. And Niles gave us an amazing overview of many of the kinds that are being used already, but they're not the only kinds. There's lots of different kinds for you to investigate and explore and even build into your Minecraft worlds when it comes to non-traditional farming practices. Some you may have never heard of, right? So your goal is to design a farm that incorporates indoor, in this case, non-traditional farming practices, but some of them may be, because we've seen what you've done in previous challenges, that doesn't mean to exclude other kinds. You can have your indoor space and maybe even some of your outdoor space incorporated into this. And that include things like vertical farming, aquaponics, which Niles talked about a lot, aquaponics, which Niles, or I did this kind of backwards, but aquaponics and hydroponics, which we talked about, right, with our fish. And then there are other options, right? Aeroponics, which we didn't really talk about. Container farming, which we didn't really talk about. Rooftop farming, greenhouse farming. And one that I always am fascinated by, even though it is an outdoor practice that you may want to look into just when you're exploring non-traditional farming practices, is agroforestry, which is seeing this rise now. I actually just watched a news story on it like 2 days ago, happened to come up, and I wish I had captured like a clip of it, and maybe could add that to the document. A little late for that, but it keeps coming up for me. So look into those. There's some things to research. But
Teach
while
us.
you're doing that, right?
Teach
So
us.
while
Put
you're-
it into your world and
Yeah.
teach us. We'd love it.
Like, so we didn't really call this out at the time, but the one the group from Japan talked about the succession that they have of the aging community in agriculture, and how they have it's becoming an urgent issue to come up with ways to deal with that. And so, like, in their area, in their circumstances, they have a situation that they're trying to address. And so what's cool about these things is, like, how does it apply to your world? Like, we want to see, we want you to share with us and everyone else, like, how does this fit into your life, into your world? And maybe we can all learn from each other and figure out how all these things work together. So I think that's really cool to that they shared that kind of pressing issue that's specific. I mean, other people may share it, but they did call it out as something they're addressing. So,
Brian, I want to just point out you've been the master of segues today, like the master. Because if we look at the questions that the students should consider, right? We get what non-traditional farming practices do farmers use today, and where and why are they using these farming techniques? But then that next one is, which non-traditional farming practices do you think would advance farming practices in the future? And do you think any of these would be beneficial to where you live? And I think, the team from Japan, Onigiri Ninja, already kind of kicked off their season by addressing that need, right? So how do they solve that need now? Which of these practices would be beneficial for their needs? And then, of course, if you explore your community's needs, which of these practices, because there are so many, would be most beneficial, do you think, and why?
And the inclusion of technology in agriculture is also important, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the productivity gains that have happened since the Green Revolution have been because we've been incorporating digital technology into our farming practices. The Japan example is a great one. It's not for lack of land, it's for lack of people. And yet productivity needs to continue because they have to feed the country and others as well. So they're looking for a technological solution, a digital technological solution for their particular need.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, that can vary from community to community. So you may have a community with a large amount of population that's willing to do farm work. But maybe the crops that you want don't grow there. Maybe the technology needed to grow those crops or the resources to grow those crops are difficult to manage. So how do you solve those parts with technology as opposed to the other issues that may affect other communities?
And the other thing to point out is, like, those people that are aging and leaving the agriculture industry didn't have computers when they were growing up. Like, you, as the young people of the world that are involved in this program, you are being brought up in this technology era, and the people that are the ones succeeding and passing it on are passing it on to people that have grown up in this environment. And so this is where you really take, like, your familiarity with video games, with technology, and then your problem-solving skills, and combine them together to create
with your love to eat.
With your belly, yes. Man, that's a motivator for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, back to the ice cream conversation now. I don't know. I feel like that just has to come up. But,
I did buy some Tillamook ice cream last night. Side note, unrelated.
I was about to say that now. You beat me to it. I was going to say the two things we've always wanted to have on the stream was the chicken, which Claire has already experienced, even if it wasn't on our Farmcraft stream. And the ice cream. And at some point, we need to get those things together into one big celebration of farm.
Chicken flavored ice cream. I'm not down with that.
Oh no, thank you.
No,
thank you. So Eric, this is the educator guide, and then, and then I know. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the submission will be through Flip, just like in the first one. And rather than go through the whole process of how to use Flip to create or submit your entry, two things. One, you can always go back and watch previous video where we walk through that a little bit. And we created a video, and I believe it's in the team guide now. Maybe down below as well.
And also down below in the resources.
In the resources, there is a link right here, how to record your video on Flip. So if I click that one, it does take us to a resource on Flip. And of course, we did also create a video, and I think that's here somewhere.
I think it's there somewhere. I'm gonna
YouTube
call it
channel,
out.
but yeah, we'll make
I'm
sure
going
it's
to
there.
immediately add that link. So in the next few minutes,
we did create
it
a
will
short
magically
video.
appear. Yes.
Yeah, we created a short video that goes over that. So that anytime you need to go back and review that, rather than watching a whole hour-long presentation, you can jump right to what you need to get your submission in, and we'll have that right up there for you.
Perfect.
And I think we're ready to see what you create when it comes to non-traditional farming practices.
Awesome. Okay, so the challenge has been set. Now we're just waiting for all of you to show us what you can do.
Yep.
Awesome. Niles, thank you so much for that extensive background. I'll say it again. You said at the beginning, oh, I know a little bit. You know so much. And I really do hope that this is an inspiration to the kids who are watching to say, look at all you can do in agriculture with technology and all the intricacies and the amount that you know about fish and plants and everything. It really is an example of becoming an expert in your field. And that is something in your field. That is something that, we're trying to encourage students. Find something you love, pursue it, go down that pathway, check it out. So with that in mind, we cannot just wait to see what you learn and what you find out about these non-traditional farming techniques. And remember, if you get your videos in before our next stream, you may be highlighted.
Let's see that.
Right. Would love to see that. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us, and our next stream will be on March 7th. So we will look forward to seeing you on March 7th.
Cool.
Good luck.
Thanks everybody. Yep.
Good luck.
Let's see what you can do.
Off to a great start. Yep.